Imam Al Gazali's perspective on free will is one of the most brilliant and nuanced reconciliations in Islamic philosophy. Writing during a time when the Islamic world was deeply split between two extremes, the Jabriyah, total determinists, who believed humans have no choice, and the Mu'tazila, rationalists, who believed humans have absolute free will, Al-Ghazali carved out a profound middle path. This middle ground is rooted in the Ash'ari doctrine of kasb, acquisition. To explain how humans can be held accountable while God remains the ultimate creator of all actions, Al-Ghazali uses deeply vivid analogies, including the stories of prophets like Prophet Ibrahim. The core philosophy, kasb, acquisition. Al-Ghazali argues that humans do not create their actions from nothing, only God creates, khaliq. However, humans will and intend actions. When our intention aligns with God's creation of the physical act, we acquire the action. This is called kasb. To make this digestible, Al-Ghazali uses the analogy of a scribe and a pen. If you see a beautiful piece of calligraphy, who wrote it? The pen, the hand, or the writer's mind? The pen is the immediate physical tool. The hand moves the pen. The mind/will directs the hand. In Al-Ghazali's view, humans are like the hand or the pen in a grander cosmic order. We have a degree of choice in our minds, but the actual power to execute that choice comes entirely from God. The example of Prophet Ibrahim. Al-Ghazali uses the story of Prophet Abraham, specifically the moment he was thrown into the fire by King Nimrod, to illustrate how free will, natural laws, and divine will interact. The illusion of natural causality. When Nimrod's men lit the massive bonfire and threw Abraham into it, the nature of fire was to burn. To a casual observer, the fire has the free will or inherent power to burn, and Abraham was doomed. However, Al-Ghazali argues in his critique of causality that inanimate objects have no inherent causal power. Fire does not choose to burn, God creates the burning at the exact moment the fire touches the wood. The miracle as a shift in divine will. When God commanded, "O fire, be coolness and safety upon Abraham," Quran 21 hours 69 minutes. The fire instantly lost its heat. Al-Ghazali uses this to show that what we perceive as cause and effect is actually just a habit of God's creation, Allah. How this applies to human free will. Just as the fire does not have the independent power to burn without God creating that burning, a human being does not have the independent power to move their hand without God creating the movement. When Prophet Abraham willingly submitted to being thrown into the fire out of absolute trust, tawakkul, he exercised his inner free will, his choice, intent, and state of heart. He could not control the external physical outcome, but he fully owned his internal spiritual choice. God then responded by altering the physical reality. Therefore, human free will is primarily located in our intentions and internal choices, not the ultimate physical results. The example of the archer, general human action. To further clarify how our will blends with God's power, Al-Ghazali gives the example of an archer shooting an arrow. The choice, the archer decides to shoot the target. This is human free will/intent. The physics, the tension of the bowstring, the wind, and the gravity are all created and sustained by God. The hit, whether the arrow hits the target, depends on a million microvariables controlled entirely by God. The archer is judged and rewarded, or punished, if they were aiming at an innocent person, based on their intent to shoot, even though the actual flight and destination of the arrow were entirely subject to divine laws. For further reading references in Al-Ghazali's works. If you want to read these arguments directly from his texts, here is where you need to look. Ihya Ulum al-Din, The Revival of the Religious Sciences. The Book of Tawhid and Tawakkul, Oneness of God and Reliance. This is the primary text where Al-Ghazali breaks down the scribe/pen analogy and explains how a person can have total reliance on God while still making personal choices. He explains how God is the mover of movers, Muzabbib al-Asbab. Tahafut al-Falasifa, the incoherence of the philosophers. The 17th discussion, on causality. This is his most famous philosophical discourse. This is exactly where he uses the example of Prophet Abraham and the fire. He rigorously argues against the philosophers who claim that fire burns by its own nature, proving instead that all physical causes are completely dependent on the divine will. Al-Maqsad al-Asna, the best means in explaining God's beautiful names. Under the explanation of the divine names like Al-Khaliq, the Creator, and Al-Bari, the Maker, he delves into how human actions are created by God but earned by humans. Al-Ghazali's view is essentially this. You are the author of your intentions, but God is the publisher of your reality. You don't have the power to create physical outcomes, as Prophet Abraham couldn't stop the fire from existing, but you have total freedom over your heart's orientation, your choices, and your efforts. And that internal choice is exactly what you are held accountable.